Today, as is the pattern when we come together, you have heard so many things. And I know that you've already sensed it, the unity that now binds this company in a way that I have not seen in a long time, maybe ever. The affection that the top executives hold for one another, the respect, the genuine respect, and also the energy and the new spirit that's beginning to be rebirthed as there's a kind of anticipation, a kind of a wind beginning to blow. I know something about that. In these years, in these 16 years, I've seen it when the wind was blowing like a mighty storm, and I've seen times when it seemed that not even the gentlest breeze was stirring around the edge of the sail of the ship, if you know what I'm saying. And the glassy waters were smooth, and the only way to get anywhere, Leah, was to row. And everyone was exhausted from rowing, and it seems that we'd toiled all night and gone nowhere. But I sense again afresh a breeze, a wind stirring, a time of hope. And you've heard so many things today, and I would like to, in my few moments that remain, try to narrow your focus. And in order to help me do that, I have some words from Paul of Tarsus. And he said this: I count not myself to have apprehended, but this one thing I do, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth to those things which are before. I press. Look at your neighbor and say, I press. I press toward the mark of the high calling. Let me tell you what he said. I count not myself to have apprehended. Somehow, as it has become my role with this company, they allow me to be the voice and to speak the feelings, the opinions, the emotions, the dreams of the executive team and of the dealers. And I take that responsibility seriously. But I think we can say, as Paul, when I add it all up, he said, I count. When I put it all together, Keith, I have to say, I don't know everything. There's just a lot of, our collective minds are incredible, far beyond any single genius. But you put us all together and we don't know all that can be known. And if you combine all of our experiences, and they are vast and they are incredible, but we haven't done everything. So Apostle Paul said, I count not myself to have apprehended. I don't know everything, and I haven't done everything. But this one thing. See, we can say that about ourselves. We don't exactly know what tomorrow holds. We don't exactly know everything today that we have to do tomorrow in order to maximize our success. But this one thing, I can tell you the biggest obstacle to becoming an artist when I was a little boy with a dream is that there are so many things to do. You know what I'm talking about? One guy wrote a book, and he said, I was going to write a book. It was going to be a great book. In fact, this opening chapter was going to be such an incredible chapter. If you happen to pick it up in the bookstore, you would read it, and by the time you got through the first paragraph, you would decide right then and there to buy the book. However, he said, but my wife came in and said, before you start your book, why don't we go out to get something to eat? And I said, I'll do that, and after we get back, I'll start the book. And we went out to eat and had a wonderful meal. And while we were there, we ran into friends, and we visited for a while, and they were going to see a movie. And I thought, but I've got this book, this incredible paragraph that I must write, and I'll get right back. As soon as the movie is over, I'll get right back, and I'll get right back on that book, and it will be as great as I promised. And the movie was great, and it was much longer than expected. And by the time they got home, it was into the morning hours, and he decided that in the morning, he would start his book. But is anybody listening to me? The reality is that the distractions are so many and so plenteous. And because you and I live in America, they are wonderful. I'll be honest with you. I wouldn't want to try to be born like these young kids today and find success. I meet young artists all the time that are incredibly gifted, but they've got video games to play, and they got the internet to be on, and they got 200 channels on televisions, and they got their own personal cell phones and iPods. Honey, I was in Slate Holler, Kentucky. We didn't have nothing. Didn't have nothing. No television, black and white television. Came in when I was 13. I had no distractions. But we've got them everywhere. But the writer here said, but this one thing I do. Just one. This one thing I do. Forgetting those things which are behind. I want to ask you this evening to forget some things. I want you to forget some things. You've endured a lot of hardship getting here. Forget about it. Some of you have had some remarkable successes. Some of you talk about how easy it used to be. Forget about it. That was then. This is now. Some of you remember how that we were the only air purifier on the block and we didn't have any competition. That was then. This is now. Some of you remember another day, but I'm just simply saying forget those things which are behind. That's hard to do. People come to me all the time and say, Mitchell, what is your favorite painting? You know what I tell them? The one I'm working on now. It'll be a sad day, John, whenever I'm older and my hands are trembling and my eyes are dim. And Angelo, I'm remembering a sometime in the past when I did a great painting. That'll be a sad day. I always want to pour the passion of the moment into the cliff, to the mountain that I'm climbing now. Forgetting, he said, those things which are behind and reaching forth to those things which are before. Well, Mitchell, what's before us? You've seen a glimpse. And somebody says, well, but that's just talk. Honey, whenever things are only vision and they don't yet exist, all we have is the brilliant, creative words that call things that are not as though they are and speak the future into the existence and say that tomorrow can be better than today and all that we hope for is just beyond our grasp. That's what we do. We reach forward to the things that are before with hope and with possibility. He said, remembering the things that are in the future and forgetting the things that are in behind me, he said, I press. And I want to hesitate there because that's where I'm going to tie this up. He said, I press. I press toward the mark. Now, I'm standing here in a symbolic set. That's not a real mountain. I could tell that when I walked in. And that is a fake campfire. And these are symbols of mountains and symbols of a campsite somewhere about 7,000 feet in elevation. Now, I'm not a mountain climber, John. I can't hardly climb a fence. But we didn't bring you in here today to teach you how to climb literal mountains. We want to help you climb the symbolic mountains in your life. Do you remember in the parable where Jesus told the disciples, he said, I say unto you, if you'll speak to the mountain and command it to be cast into the sea. He wasn't talking about a literal mountain. He was talking about those symbolic mountains that are in our way. There are some of you listening to me today that are living under a mountain of debt. You know what I'm talking about? In fact, if you're like most of America, you spend 25% of your annual income just paying the interest and the service charges on your debt. In fact, it's one of the most alarming statistics that I read recently that this year there will be more people go bankrupt than will graduate from all of the colleges and universities in this grand nation of ours. There's got to be a solution. The mountain that we face is incredible. And the mountain, I believe, has pressed on us. There are mountains of discouragement. The voices in our head. We look at what is before us and the task that is to be done. And Mike stands here and says, help me. Press yourself. Give a little extra energy. And you might say, well, that's easy for you to say, Mike, but you don't know my situation. There's a mountain in front of me. I recognize this evening that many of us have been pressed with our aging parents, our rebelling kids, our overextended payment plan, and add this to it. Neither the Democrats nor the Republicans won't talk about it because it'll keep you from getting reelected, but let me bring it up since I'm not running for anything. There is a steady evolution of middle-class America as we know it. 50 years ago, whenever my daddy was a boy, you know what you could do with a 6th grade education? You could walk out of Slate Holler, Kentucky, and go into Eastern Kentucky and put on a hard hat and go to work in a mine and make PhD pay. But nowadays, education is the order, and I'm for education. But you could go to Detroit, Michigan, or go somewhere up north, and you could walk into a plant with little or no education and get on the assembly line and make the pay that would rival that of college professors. But that was yesterday. Now they're shipping our jobs overseas, and the middle class is eroding and becoming a third world country right before our eyes, and the mountain is pressing us. But here's what I want to say to you. Apostle Paul acknowledged all of that whenever he wrote these words, and he said, forgetting those things which are behind and reaching forth to those, that's the one thing. What is the one thing? Listen, it's time for us to no longer to be pressed by our mountain, Mike, and it's time to press back. I want somebody to be a climber, not climbed on. Somebody to rise up, not lay down. Somebody to say, I'll find success. I will not lay down and be run over top of and be told that the veterans that stood here with me earlier today wasted their time and America's best days are behind her. I say, no, there's got to be an answer. There's got to be a solution. Listen, the vision of this company has never changed. It's been challenged, but never changed. It's been sleepy, but never dead. You need to understand there's still life in this thing. And we sit here in this camp at 7,000 feet. But as high as we have come, it's from this campsite today that we begin our symbolic ascent to the summit. See, each of us, listen, even though that there's a single mountain, the mountain is personal to each of us. Each of us face our own part of it in our own way, with our own demons and our own challenges, your own personal obstacles and your own personal hardships, your own personal health problems and your own personal deal. We've all got our own thing, and yes, it is in every way very personal. But even though it is very personal, it is up to you to decide that today I'll begin to press back. I'll begin to push. I'll raise the standard. See, the vision has always been for the hurting families that are looking for a way out, those that need a choice, single moms, and nowadays at an ever-growing number, single dads. Do you know that in America today that over half of our marriages will end in divorce, and 81% of the time that divorce is brought on by financial hardship? Somebody somewhere ought to step forward with some kind of a solution. And I just happen to believe that there is a small nylon cord. It's just a small cord. It seems insignificant, but hand by hand, it reaches through our hands, John and Joe. It reaches through our hands and points to the summit. What is that summit? What is that thing that we're trying to get everybody to go to? The idea here is not, we're not trying to get you together and see how much money we can all put in a sack and get so stinking rich and ugly full of ourselves that we're no good to us or to humankind. We're looking for people that said, hey, there's got to be a better way for you and for your family, for your marriage, for your kids. And we believe that this nylon cord leads us to a higher place, to a better place. I mean, there's just a better place than this so-called rat race. There are choices that we offer working moms and dads that just aren't available anywhere else. I mean, I believe if you have a chance, you ought to get all the education you can. But what if it's a little late for you? There's a choice. I believe families ought to stay together and moms and dads ought to stay married. But what if it didn't work out that way for you and you're a single mom with 3 or 4 kids trying to keep it together and to balance the budget? We have a choice for moms like that. What if you didn't want to retire? You wanted to hang in there because you knew you had so much to offer, but your corporation said, we've had enough of you. We got somebody that can do your job for half the money, and they sent you out to pasture, and you feel like your options are done. There's a choice for you, and that rope that reaches to the summit, we're asking to get a hold of that. This one thing. We'll go together. Listen, I'll conclude it here. Raise your expectations. Raise your eyes. Get your eyes off the ground. There's nothing down here for you. In that verse that I just read to you that you heard, you don't belong in these low places among the complacent. You're uncomfortable with everyone else. You don't fit in. You know that about yourself. Mike said that you're a radical, different kind of people. And it's true. That's what attracts me to you. Your burning desire to lift your head and to somehow rise and climb to the top and stand on a summit and lift your hands and touch the ancient sky and for a moment achieve more than most of the world would ever dare dream. I read an account of a king who had everything, even his own personal private golf course. But he didn't know how to play golf. So he thought that he would hire a teacher. And he sent here to America and hired a professional golfer and invited him to his country. Sent his private jet, a 747, complete with an apartment, and flew this professional golfer, true story by the way, flew him to his country where he was met with red carpet and all the protocol that can only be given by a king. They led him to the palace where he enjoyed sumptuous provision of every sort, was awakened early the next day when he met the king, and together they traveled to the king's personal golf course where they played golf together, and he provided lessons for an entire week. By the end of the week, they had become fast friends. And as the man was now departing to return to America, the king traveled with him in his limousines with his entourage to the airport. They stood there together, and through an interpreter, the king asked the golfer, "What can the king give you?" To which he answered, "I don't need anything. You've already given me so much more than I expected. It's been wonderful spending this time here with you. Really, I don't expect anything more." Someone came to the golfer and whispered in his ear, "You are offending the king. He wants to give you a gift. Receive what he'll give you. Tell him what you want." I started to say, in the midst of distraction, we have a hard time deciding what matters and what we want. My friend Bill Davis teaches his seminar, Understanding Your Why. Why? What do you do? Why do you do it? Understand what you want. Don't squander your moment with the king when he says, "What do you want?" The King of Kings asked Solomon, "What do you want?" He said, "Wisdom." He asked Elisha, "What do you want?" He said, "I want a double portion of what Elijah had." He asked blind Bartimaeus, "What do you want?" He said, "Lord, that I might receive my sight." And the king says to you and me, you have not because you ask not. What do you want? He said to the golfer, "Tell the king what you want." Perplexed, caught off guard, he said, "Well, you know, I collect golf clubs. And, maybe you could get me a golf club." The king said, "Sure." He climbed on the plane and flew home. He watched the mailbox, waited for the UPS truck to see. He dreamed, Marvin, that maybe it would be a gold putter with the king's signature or the king's emblem. He thought maybe it would be jeweled with a handle with precious stones. He imagined what kind of a golf club this king would get. Weeks turned into months, and one day a courier arrived in a limousine carrying only a letter sealed with the king's seal. He walked to the door and handed it to the man. And as he signed for it and the gentleman walked away, he carefully opened it with his penknife. And on the inside was a letter from the king telling him again how much he enjoyed the time. He said, "It was not easy for me to find the gift that you requested, but alas, I did. In Southern California, 500 acres. I think you'll find it suitable for your golfing." He bought the man a golf club. Can you dare, Mike, one more time, to lift your dream that high? Higher than you can reach? Further than your bank account will allow you to dream? That old car that barely got you here? Can you look past that and imagine that you could recruit the likes of Daryl Jackson, because he would be more excited about where you are going than he is where he is? Can you dream? Can you see? Can you imagine? If you can imagine it, then you can ascend to the summit as we go. God bless you is my prayer. Thank you.